how many of you, if you can raise your hand, have experienced infertility or know somebody who experienced infertility? It could be a mother, a child, a cousin, a friend. In my experience, nearly everybody knows somebody who has struggled with that. As mentioned, my name's Daniel. This is Brenna Kate, my lovely wife and partner. As you can tell, today we had a very big breakfast. Just kidding. We are expecting a child at the end of the year. So today's talk is about infertility, and specifically infertility caused by a virus. And I'm going to tell you 3 stories, and then I'm going to relate that back to how it's affecting us in this room and the community that we represent. And real quick, I wanted to mention, I don't know if, Jen, if now is a good time to tell you, I'm deathly afraid of public speaking.
Well, this is an easy group for you. This isn't public.
Yeah.
This is a family.
Well, I just wanted to put it out there in case I die during the presentation that...
probably lots of us know CPR. So
yeah. Sounds good. The first story is about the state of healthcare in the US. And a few years ago, I had the privilege of hosting an amazing cancer researcher. He is the guy, he's like the doctor of last resort. So if when patients are stage 3, stage 4 terminal cancer, they may have already been treated at some other hospital. I'm not going to name names, but one of them sounds like a condiment that you put on a sandwich and rhymes with hey-o. He's basically the last resort. And I was asking him, I was like, so are you board certified? Are you a board certified oncologist? He said, no, I'm not. And I was really interested. I was like, okay, well, don't you need to be board certified? He said, no, well, the thing is, I'm interested in curing people. I'm not interested in just treating them. And there's a big difference there. He said, my mother suffered, she struggled with cancer, and I watched her die. And I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. And so my mission is to cure people. And the challenge with healthcare today is that out of all of the range, there's a huge pie of possible of research and treatments available. And the problem is that there's only a narrow slice of treatments that have been approved. So if you're board certified, you're only allowed to treat people within that narrow slice of possible treatments. If you go outside of that, you take personal liability. And he's like, most oncologists are not willing to take that personal liability, or their employers are not willing to let them do that. So as a result, people are suffering. They're not getting the proper diagnosis or the proper treatment that can help them on an individual basis. He's like, by the way, that narrow slice of information is outdated. It hasn't been updated for over 30 years. So that one to me, I was like, oh my gosh, something needs to change. That's the state of healthcare. The second story is now relating to this virus causing infertility in the community. A couple months ago, I had a call with a woman. This was actually an interview. So I was talking to one of the best marketing agencies in the US. And when I say they're one of the best, like they have so many people that want their help that they actually interview you to see if they want to take your money. And during the call, as I was explaining about this virus and infertility and what we're doing to try to overcome it, she broke down crying. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? She said, everything's okay. I'm so sorry. Like, this is the first time I've ever cried in a meeting. In 20 years of basically talking to people, this is the first time I've ever cried, in a business setting. And she's like, it's just that what you're describing now touches me so deeply because my daughter struggled for years to be able to get pregnant. And her experience has been horrible. She failed IVF 4 times in a row. And only after failing 4 times in a row did the doctors finally test her for the virus you're talking about. And she was positive. And after getting treated for that virus, she managed to conceive naturally. This is something that people need to know about.
Oh,
the third story is about the origin of how we came to know about it and how we're here presenting to you today. My mission in life has always been to help people. ever since I was a little kid. I wanted to solve problems. I actually went to engineering to learn how to solve problems. I want to basically solve the biggest problems and help the most people I can within my lifetime. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. But before I graduated high school, I came across an opportunity to get involved in developing a new economic model for development that could uplift, and the goal was to uplift 800 million people in Africa into the middle class. And I was like, heck yeah, I'm doing this. So I volunteered because I didn't have any skills. And over time, I developed skills and basically contributed to this. I actually spent 10 years in Africa, basically working on this model, literally building out initially it was a community-owned, sustainable city. We took an existing village of 35,000 people, and we integrated them into the master development plan, and we built an economic engine to basically create an economy and lift everyone into the middle class. That model has now spread to 12 countries in Africa, and we're on track now to be able to accomplish our goal, think of uplifting 800 million people by 2050. So her background,
I'm from Bourne. I went to Bourne High School, and then I went to Mass Maritime, and I'm a marine engineer. I sailed for 7 years after graduation. And then after graduation, I came back and volunteered in Africa, and that's where I met Daniel.
Wow. Yeah. So she was looking for something more fulfilling. She said, hey, like, I want to come out and see the project. I was like, okay, great, like, come on over. And she was planning to leave after a week or two. I told her, extend your stay.
Yeah, I stayed for a year.
and during that time, then sparks flew. We decided, okay, we want to be able to get married. Because of malaria, we wanted to move back to the U.S., and we were looking for opportunities to continue trying to make a big impact on society. What can we do to contribute? During our exploration, I had a call with my mother, who is an infectious disease expert, the most renowned researchers on HIV and AIDS. She does other viruses like HHV6, which is actually the virus that we're describing. And during the call, she mentioned that there's this virus that fertility clinics were sending samples from their most difficult patients. These are patients who kept failing IVF over and over. And they were sending her samples. And a lot of them were testing positive for this virus. And she's like, and by the way, the treatment for this is extremely simple. You just take an antiviral treatment. It's about $10, and you can actually, and it significantly improves pregnancy outcomes. And I was like, wow, like, okay, so what's being done about this virus? Like, the thing is, within the US, there's about 10 million women every single year who struggle to conceive. And out of those 10 million, 3 million are in the unexplained category, meaning they don't know why they can't get pregnant. Even after doing all the tests, they still can't conceive. And so it's really a big challenge. And so when we're looking at this virus, we're like, wow, okay, the research is showing 43% of these women with unexplained infertility may have this virus, and treating it is really simple. So, what's the issue? How come more people aren't being treated for this? Well, one of the first challenges that we identified was testing. The virus it's not detected in the blood. It's not detected in the saliva. So how do you test for it? Well, for 40 years, the only way to test for it was an endometrial biopsy, which is a very painful procedure. It's kind of like a pap smear, except they have to go all the way into the uterus and scrape tissue. And then that tissue is sent to the lab and tested. So we thought, okay, there has to be a much better way. It turns out that you can actually detect the virus using menstrual fluid. And so that's what we set out with. We partnered with the leading laboratory on testing this virus. There's only 2 laboratories in the world that have the expertise to do it. We partnered with the leading one, and we developed a kit which now can be sent to people's homes. They collect a sample, and then they mail it back, and if they're positive, they can get treatment. The second challenge now that we've run into in a big way is awareness. As I was mentioning earlier, the state of healthcare in the US is that a lot of the available treatments and research is being overlooked. The textbooks haven't been updated for 30 years. And we get questions all the time from people. Basically, the assumption is that their doctor is going to bring it up. The doctor is going to tell them, hey, you should get checked for this virus. Well, a lot of doctors don't know about it. Where we're at now is our mission is just to spread awareness. The reason we're here today is to spread awareness. And how does this relate to you and everyone in this room and the community? I just want to do a quick show of hands. How many of you, if you can raise your hand, have experienced infertility or know somebody who experienced infertility? It could be a mother, a child, a cousin, a friend. In my experience, nearly everybody knows somebody who has struggled with that. The family unit is the basic building block of the community. And the way I like to conceptualize it is that the community is like a fabric. And every family is a strand in that fabric. Now, if you only have one family, you don't have a community. It's really just a strand. But now when you have hundreds or thousands of families coming together within a community, you actually develop a very strong and resilient fabric. And it can withstand a lot of pressure. You can have storms and other issues that come up, and it's going to hold strong. Now, the challenge is with infertility. Infertility now basically causes a lot of stress. As you saw with the mother of the woman who was struggling with infertility, who was failing IVF over and over, that doesn't just affect the individuals with the infertility, it affects everyone around them. It includes their parents, maybe their siblings, it can include their friends, their coworkers. And so because emotions are contagious, you can imagine if they're feeling isolated, if they're feeling depressed, that those negative emotions will infect others around them. And in the workplace, it decreases productivity. In the community, it can also cause other people to become isolated and not to want to interact with others. I was telling you about the size of the infertility. 3 million people with unexplained infertility across the nation. Well, if you just approximate the population of our local community here in Cape Cod, you're talking about between 2,000 and 5,000 individuals who have that, and the people that they infect now grows to, say, 20,000 to, if it's just 10 people that they interact with on average, you're talking about 20,000 to 50,000 people just within our community who are directly impacted by infertility. And so really, I guess what we're looking for is, this is something that affects us. It's something that, as far as the virus goes, the virus, it's called human herpes virus 6A. It's something that's really easy to treat. People just aren't aware of it. And so really what we're looking for from everybody that we meet is just to be able to share the information with people you know. Like, you never know who is struggling or who knows somebody who's struggling. So if you were to share it with your children, to share it with your friends, send out an email to your contacts and say, hey, just FYI, I came across this. I think we can actually make a big difference in our community or, in your lives. Then we can actually spread awareness and overcome, some of these big obstacles like the current state of healthcare in America.
So in the Boston network, Massachusetts network, are there physicians who know about this virus and will seek treatment for folks who come to them?
Yeah, excellent question. So the question was, within the area, like in the Boston area, are there people with doctors who are aware of the virus and can offer treatment? And to my knowledge, there's not. I'm not aware of any. We have initially we reached out to fertility clinics. I called 30 different clinics. These were small to medium size, so it's not the big ones. It's not Boston IVF. I haven't talked to them. But in those 30 calls, the overwhelming response was, no, we don't know what it is. Only 2 out of the 30 were aware of it, and both of them were not interested in testing for it. One of them was kind enough to explain why. They said, look, we're in the IVF business. So,
Good response.
so that's kind of, and
So we don't really want to
cure the people.
Yeah, it's not about curing people. Like
Yeah,
the
IVF's
fear,
expensive.
the fear is that this is going to affect their bottom line, and I would expect it to. But I would expect other ways to basically make up for it. And there are IVF clinics that are testing for it. The problem is that they're only testing for it after multiple failed rounds of IVF. The HHV6 Foundation, this is an independent group. We're not associated with them. They actually recommend testing for it as a basic screening test.
Yeah,
But
that's why you do it first,
yeah.
and then if that's it, you solve that. And
Yeah. Among IVF patients who are positive for it and then don't get treated and go into IVF, their success rate is only 17%. Now, after they're treated, the same people, if they're treated, and then they go now for IVF, their success rate increases from 17% to 56%. That's a 3.3 times increase in success. And that's just about on par with the average for people who are negative to begin with, which is 58%. So it's basically on par. If you get the virus, it significantly decreases your chances. The way that it works is that it blocks implantation. That's the reason that even IVF can't overcome it, is because it changes the uterus, blocks implantation, and if you're lucky enough, I told you 17% can still conceive with IVF. Well, if you're lucky enough to conceive, the problem is it may not stay attached. You may have a pregnancy loss because it also inhibits the growth of the placenta. And if the placenta doesn't grow, it can't supply nutrients to the baby. So there's really two mechanisms that it causes infertility.
So what's the N in the 56%? I mean, was the number of people studied comparable to the folks, the other folks that don't have testing?
Yeah, so so that was 75 data samples. It's very relevant, right?
We're scaling.
Yeah, so we're trying to acquire obviously a lot more data. Those are based on 75 data points. Now, one of the challenges in terms of when we're talking about 17% success rate, the challenge of getting that is an ethical concern. Is like, okay, if you know this virus significantly impairs pregnancy, is it ethical to even have a study where you knowingly have people that are infected with it and don't treat them before they do the test? Like
a blind study, that's the way you get credibility.
Yeah. So the good thing is, fortunately, there is a lot of research that's come out about the virus. Initially, it came out in 2016. There was a study out of Italy that found that 43% of women with unexplained infertility tested positive, compared to 0% of the fertile controls. So people who were giving birth didn't have it. We've seen within our own data, 51% of people who repeatedly fail IVF actually test positive. So that's why we're estimating roughly 1 in 2 women who have unexplained infertility, or about 1.5 million across the country, would actually benefit. And within this community, you're talking about 2,000 to 5,000 people who would actually benefit,
the women
potentially
or
self-die.
the person who's bearing the child,
Correct.
the fetus or whatever, has to be empowered to ask.
Exactly. Yeah, they really have to be aware of it, and they should bring it up to their doctor. I think it's an absolute travesty to wait to bring it up to someone's doctor, because as far as we're aware, a lot of them are not aware. Or if they are aware, there may be real concerns. It's a conflict of interest. They may be concerned it's going to affect their bottom line. There's so many people that have it. The treatment is so cheap. Or their perception is it could absolutely reduce their income if they treated it.
$100,000 question. Insurance doesn't cover it, probably.
Well, actually, some of it does. If a doctor recommends it, then insurance will cover it. And it depends on everyone's individual policy, right? Some policies don't cover it, some do. Some cover it up to 100%, some of them 20%, 50%, whatever. So it really depends on individual plans. But as long as a doctor recommends it, then it's covered.
So you use your test kit at home.
Mm-hmm.
You send it back to the lab.
Yeah.
Now that is a price involved, I'm sure.
Correct.
Is that still covered, do you think? Only if the doctor, can you order the kit without having a doctor say so?
Yes.
So therefore, you're sending the results to a lab.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not,
It's called the mother.
obviously you're gonna pay for it. I can't imagine.
Correct. Yeah, so the way that it's structured is that basically across actually all 50 states, we've actually partnered with providers who are aware of how to be able to provide treatment. And they also authorize the testing. So in Massachusetts here, for example, nobody can order the test directly without a doctor's authorization. So that's required by law. There's 5 states, including New York, New Jersey, Maryland. They also have that provision where people can't order it directly without a physician. So we partnered with physicians to be able to help people. So if someone elected in any state in the US to be tested, in 45 states, we can just send it. They can do it on their own. In the 5 states, including Massachusetts, where it's required, we have physicians who are willing to basically authorize that, so people can still get tested without having to run and search, in case they wanted to do that.
I guess I was just going to ask, because you mentioned you met with a marketing firm to really try to promote what you're trying to do. I guess I'm wondering what's been the result of that communication?
Yeah.
And it seems like instead of reaching out to fertility clinics, like you said, there's a little conflict there. Obviously, the person's OBGYN have to be involved in their care at some point. It seems like they're the main point of contact to get the information through.
Yep.
And I guess I just want to address if that's where you're directing towards, like that type of position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing is, I think people should absolutely involve their primary care physician or their OBGYN. I wouldn't recommend going around them, but I would recommend bringing it up to them. And the thing is, if someone has reached the point where, they're unexplained and their doctor doesn't know what to do, well, they can bring it up to their doctor, but they could also take the initiative and check for it. This is something that's really easy to treat for. In the old days, big pharmacies, like the pharmaceutical industry, used to just pay doctors to recommend stuff. And that was outlawed. And so now when they advertise, they tell, okay, go and talk to your doctor about this drug, right? So it's really the same concept as we're saying, okay, we have the means now through social media. We can basically tell people the same thing. Hey, look, learn about this and go talk to your doctor and see if they can recommend it for you based on, your current stage in your fertility journey. Correct.
How do you know? You have to be retested, or you just take whatever somebody must have said what the one inside it.
Yeah.
Take your active virus.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good question. So how do you know if it's been treated? Well, I'll tell you. So 42% of women who are treated then conceive naturally. For others, if you don't conceive, if you're not among that roughly 42% who would conceive immediately after the treatment, then you can retest. And it is common actually to do a retest afterward just to confirm that it's negative. If you test negative, that's a really big benefit because then you can proceed to other interventions with confidence. You asked how the messaging is going. So I think really it's actually pretty interesting. So the industry standard in terms of messaging is to basically grab the attention of roughly 2.35%. So this is in healthcare, like 2.35% of messages will resonate and people will stop and actually read it. Some of our messages are getting about 3 times that. So it means that, this is actually it resonates with a lot more people than even, your typical illnesses.
And apparently there hasn't been any researchers that reputable researching magazines and stuff that pick this up as a topic to get out there.
Yeah, it's true. So there, as far as the research goes, like PubMed is a really good source, but it's pretty dense. Like there's a lot of scientific jargon. It's not easy for most people to understand. So really our mission is kind of to take like the scientific literature and these publications and simplify it down so that's easy to understand.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having
I
us.
appreciate it. That's a little thank you from
Thank you.
us.
I appreciate it.
I never heard of that. Did anyone? I've never. Yeah. So I'm so glad that you came and you have the shirt now. So
Very good. Thank you.
You did it.
I'm not dead yet, so I may try again.